Hello, good afternoon, physics students. Hope that you all had a fantastic weekend and that you're excited to get back to work with remote learning today. So today is our final chapter in the sound unit, and it brings a tear to my eye because sound truly is one of my favorite components of physics. I hope that you've enjoyed thinking about sound in a bit more technical way. Today we kind of leave that technical black and white field and move more into the musical world, which, as we know, has a lot more color. It's a lot more vibrant, and there's a lot more going on, I feel. Especially emotionally and psychologically when it comes to thinking about music instead of thinking about just tones and sounds like tuning forks and the like. So let's go ahead and get rolling with our lecture for today. Alrighty, musical sound. So throughout this lecture, we're going to talk about noise versus music, what the difference is there, musical sounds, and how they're defined. Typically, we define them using pitch, intensity, and quality. We're also going to talk about a few different types of musical instruments, Fourier analysis, which is something we've already done, and just briefly talk a little bit, just scratch the surface as to how DVDs work. Don't scratch your DVDs, but we'll scratch the surface as to how they operate. So noise. Noise is always around us. It's always going on. We're almost always hearing things. There is a hyper quiet room in Minneapolis, actually, where you can go and sit, and it is near silent. And there's no way to achieve quite perfect silence, but because of the acoustics of the room, they've actually designed it so it blocks out almost all sound. But for our sake, especially down here on this island, we're always hearing things. We're always hearing rustling of trees. If you live somewhere like I do, you're always hearing roosters crowing every morning and night at 2 a.m. There's always waves crashing on the sand. There's wind blowing through. There's cars on the road. There's always things happening. Maybe the hum of the refrigerator. These sounds we tend to drone out. Our own ears kind of start to ignore them and call them white noise. Now, music, on the other hand, is intentional. Music is designed to sound beautiful. I love this point. Music is the art of sound, and it has a different character. Because really, when it all comes down to it, we're just talking about pressured columns of air. That's it. We're talking about longitudinal waves that push through the air, hit our ears, and generate a sound. Speaking of noise, sorry about that truck that just rolled by. But music, on the other hand, has much more of an intent behind it. We want music to sound beautiful, and that's why we create it the way that we do. As you can see with this graph at the bottom, it's much more of a pattern. There's a lot more focus there than on something as random as noise. And the line that separates music from noise, very, very thin line, and it's very, very subjective. Some people will say they go outside and they just listen to nature and they hear a song. They hear nature creating a song. Me, I have yet to hear that. I hear noise. But that line is kind of up to a personal basis. So musical tones in general have three different characteristics. There's pitch, that's high versus low. There's intensity, that's how loud it is, that's amplitude. And then there is quality, which is how nice either the individual sound sounds or how nice a collection of sounds work together. So as far as pitch, we should all know a little bit about pitch. I'll give us an example. From low to high to low. That's a difference in pitch. In fact, I jumped an octave, meaning I doubled the frequency or cut the wavelength in half. Each note has its own specific pitch, and we describe these pitches by frequency. High frequencies create high-pitched sounds, and low frequencies produce low sounds. Here, a keyboard is a beautiful way to demonstrate the way sound operates. A keyboard goes from lowest down on the left side to the highest notes up on the far right side. Musicians give different pitches, different letter names. A through G, and then it repeats again. We also have flats and sharps in between that would be the black keys on the piano. All the notes from A through G create one full octave. And if we multiply any note's frequency by 2, we create that exact same note in the next octave. Same note, but just different pitch. That was a B flat that I was just playing, and it is the same harmonic structure as one another, and its frequencies have just been doubled, jumping from one octave to the next. Pitch can also be changed by the type of instrument that is playing. Here at the bottom, it looks like we have a trumpet. Its lambda, or wavelength, is quite long, producing a low sound. Whereas on top of it looks like a flute, maybe a piccolo. Lambda is much shorter. A shorter wavelength produces a higher frequency, higher pitch. Typically in music, we max out at about 4,000 hertz. Past that, things really start to sound like noise. That doesn't stop some musicians from trying, though. But typically, if you were to go to a concert hall or really any concert, you would only hear up to 4,000 hertz. Despite the fact that we can hear well up to 18,000. In fact, we stress test that in class, and some people, I think, were able to get up to 19,000. So that's pretty crazy. Good stuff. Now, talking about intensity and loudness. So talking about how loud a musical piece is, again, is a very subjective thing. It's a very gray area. Musicians use terms for these. We call it piano and forte. Then there are different flavors of each of these. Pianos means soft and forte means strong. And any composer or conductor out there really prefers the terms soft and strong rather than quiet and loud. But then there's pianissimo, which means very soft, to piano, to mezzo piano, to mezzo forte, forte, and fortissimo is very, very loud. From an analytical standpoint, we quantify this using watts per meter square. Our ears are able to have this huge range from 10 to the negative 12 all the way up to 1, which is the threshold of pain, right? That 1 watt per meter square. Sometimes you hear sounds that are so loud, it really does start to hurt. Here's a beautiful chart showing just this. So go ahead, take some time, look at this chart. I find it just fascinating thinking about where that 1 watt per meter square happens. That's at 120 decibels, and that's at an air raid siren. It makes sense that an air raid siren would hurt you to hear because you want to make sure people are able to hear if an air raid is going on. A jet airplane 30 meters away, I would not want to be in the presence of that. And this term of decibels was named after Alexander Bell. He kind of logarithmically converted watts per meter square to a new structure called decibels, so that we aren't dealing with 0.11 zeros and a 1. Now we're just dealing with 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. Much more simple terms for us to grab and understand and run with. So again, the sound, the intensity of sound is objective, but the way that it makes us feel can be very subjective. In fact, there was a qualitative study done by the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health that proved more or less that people tend to enjoy louder sounds, louder music in particular. Once music reaches a certain decibel level, people tend to enjoy it very much more. However, the way that we hear sounds can also be a huge factor there. As you see here, a 3,500 hertz sound at 80 decibels sounds almost twice as loud to us as a 125 hertz sound. If you pull up that online tone generator from last week's assignment, go ahead and kind of move the cursor back and forth. Now, while you're doing this, the amplitude is not changing whatsoever. It's all done by an engineered code, so it's not going to allow the amplitude to change. But as you change it from lower to higher frequencies and back down, you'll notice that there are certain pockets that sound very loud and other pockets that then drop off and become very quiet. That's just the way we as humans hear. Now, as for quality of sound, we can usually tell when a piano's playing or when a clarinet's playing. We can tell when a bass is singing versus when an alto is singing. And we know the difference between these. We know the difference between our mom and dad's voice or our different friends' voices. That has to do with sound quality. Even though they may be at the exact same pitch, maybe even with the exact same loudness, the quality can still be totally different. We call this quality timbre. It looks like it says timbre, T-I-M-B-E-R-E, but it's actually pronounced timbre. One other way that musicians control the quality of sound is by using accents. We can make notes sound what we call staccato, which is short and choppy. We can make them sound legato, which is long and flowy, tenuto as well. Or there's marcato, which is a lot more with a lot more force. It's not as choppy as staccato, but there's a lot more oomph behind each and every note. But when we talk about how notes pair up together, when we start to create chords and compositions, and this is something that we did last week, we look for harmonics. We look for things that sound beautiful when brought together. Now, looking at the charts on the right, I immediately think of the jump rope that we did in class, where the faster and faster that you spin the jump rope, you create more and more of these nodes and antinodes. And when these start to settle, they sound very nice brought together. Now, the length of this first harmonic is relative. It doesn't matter. Maybe this first harmonic is an A. Well, if you double the frequency of an A, you get another A. Then if you were to triple that first A and wind up with the third harmonic, you get the fifth, which is, I think, an F. Nope, it's an E. Sorry, AJ. And as we continue down this, we wind up having all of the harmonics, and these produce the most beautiful chords that we hear. If you turn on any album, any radio station, any record, you're hearing these harmonic structures from the first harmonic through the eighth and some composition of them in some way. Now, also speaking of that timbre, the way that an individual note comes across from different instruments, or even from just different people's voices, we can graph these. We can collect the sound using a very sensitive microphone, and we can see how it resonates more or less with using that technology. So here we have a piano that's played the note C, and here we have a clarinet that's played the note C. You can tell that they're very similar in a lot of ways, yet very different in a lot of other ways. And that is what produces that color. That's what makes one instrument sound so much different than another. Speaking of different instruments, we've got vibrating strings. That's your violins, cellos, violas, basses, double basses, guitars, sitars, all sorts of different stringed instruments out there. We also have vibrating air columns, like a trumpet. Woodwinds can produce different sounds by changing the length of the instrument, the mass of the instrument, or brass instruments change the length of its own instrument as you play along. So a trumpet has all these extra little valves down here, and by pressing a valve, we elongate the tube with which the air needs to flow through. So if I play a note and then start adding valves to it, the note will go down. The more valves that I add, and in certain different combinations, the more tube, the longer the trumpet gets, and with that more tubing, the lower the note will drop. Woodwinds operate by using a reed. It's a reed composed from usually canes, or either bamboo or sugar cane, I forget. And by vibrating this, we produce a sound. All sound comes from vibration. That is the origin of all sound. And then by different combinations of the keys on the instruments, like a saxophone, we produce different sounds. Fifes, flutes, and piccolos, they follow the bottle technique, where if you hold a glass bottle under your lip and you blow over it, it produces a sound. Take a sip, and you produce a different sound. Then there's percussion. This is like a drum set, marimbas, tambourines, xylophones, cymbals, striking a two-dimensional membrane, usually using a mallet or a drumstick, something like that. The tone that it produces depends on the shape of it, how elastic it is, and the tension of the surface. Believe it or not, you can tune a drum set. They're called keys. It's a little wrench type tool that you can put to tighten the head of the drum. The tighter it gets, the higher the pitch goes, just like when we were plucking with our little guitars in class. And then there's electronical music instruments. This is like a guitar meeting an amplifier, and how that amplifier can totally change the way that the guitar sounds. Or perhaps it's a digital keyboard, where there isn't even a string being plucked. It is simply a note being, or a key being pressed. No string has been hit, no vibration has been created, just a code has been sent through, and that code tells an amplifier to start vibrating in a certain way from there. Fourier analysis. We did this last week. This is the combining of different waves to create a composite wave. So here we have an oboe and a clarinet. It looks like they may be playing the same note. Perhaps they're playing harmonics of one another. And when we combine those two sounds together, it looks like the final graph, graph C.